We're here to unveil the draft of our new comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan is a blueprint for how Cedar Park will look and feel over the next 20 years.
Simply put, it is the document of what our community says it wants its city to look and feel and be like in the future. I really would like you to think about a specific word, and that word is place, a location, a place. Because I find that as we work through this comp plan, the idea of place came up over and over and over again. We want to talk about what this place is, and this idea that good things come to those who plan. Because it is our community's voice and input, and that's your voice, that helps determine what our future is here in Cedar Park. In our community, our folks looked around and they said, you know, we're not sure that we want this ever-expanding Austin to eat up our community, because they believed firmly that the future and the destiny of Cedar Park could be best served by those in the community. And in 1973, our residents went to the polls, they went and took a vote for Cedar Park to become an official city with its own governance and its first city council. And that city council took some really important first steps to build our city. They established the first police department. They made sure our fire department, which was a volunteer department back then, was here to help serve our residents. They helped secure water supply for the future. And they did something else. They applied the first zoning in Cedar Park. Zoning is a planning tool that a city uses to designate land use, specific land uses, to individual properties. For example, the types of housing that may go on a piece of property, the types of retail that may go on bigger properties. It looks at not only the use, but also the development standards for each of those designations. Really what we're here tonight to talk about is the bigger picture, the broader use for development and growth in Cedar Park in our future. It also looks at the infrastructure that's necessary to serve us in the future. And by infrastructure, I mean water, wastewater, roads. In 1998, Cedar Park looks a little bit different than in 1973. At this point in time, it's not just a few hundred people, but its population is closer to 20,000. It's the fourth fastest growing city in the nation at that time. The city leaders and our community members are in the middle of a very big planning effort, and it was a comprehensive plan. And so were there big ideas in the 98 plan? I would tell you absolutely there were. Our community said they wanted a city that was attractive, and they wanted a city that continued to be a family-oriented place. Their community said they wanted a sense of place, of identity. They wanted to have connections between neighborhoods and community members. They wanted a plan for Bell Boulevard, which is 183 that runs through the middle of our town, good transportation routes, a hospital in our community, quality development for shopping and dining and entertainment. They wanted places for our kids to play. In essence, what they said is, we want to be more than a bedroom community. They called it being a full-service city.
About 14 months ago, some extensive public input was sought via a website called Imagine Cedar Park, as well as through town hall meetings, focus groups, and through a community steering committee. So now that portion of the input and analysis process is complete and has been included in our draft plan.
The vision says we imagine the city of Cedar Park as a family-oriented, attractive destination, and a leader in business development that's committed to an exceptional quality of life. That says a lot to me. Those are big plans and talks about what kind of place this is. I want you to take a look at some of the specific input we got directly from our community through the community outreach when we talked about what do you want Cedar Park to be? It says things like continue to be family oriented, provide entertainment destination, gathering places, have distinctive character, address traffic congestion, look for job growth, and consider the design and appearance of the development here.
We've broken it up into 3 components, and in addition to that, we'll be sharing with you some fictional Cedar Park families. Now, these are the families that are represented through our public input process, and we even think that you may recognize yourselves in some of our families.
So first, we want to introduce you to the Butterfields. Our Butterfields are empty nesters. Maybe they were the family that came here in the 70s and their grandchildren are nearby, or maybe they're the empty nesters whose kids just got out of high school. But they've been a part of our community. They have deep roots here. They were the folks that got involved in their neighborhood, in their church, and in those community events that we started when people said we want to feel more of a connection. It's the 4th of July fireworks, or maybe the lighting of the heritage tree. Let's also say hello to the Woods. The Woods represent a demographic that's pretty common in Cedar Park, and that's a family with young children who moved here to buy an affordable home in a nice community with a good school district. But they also represent a part of our demographic that works here too. Mrs. Wood is the founder and CEO of a small engineering firm that's grown right here in Cedar Park. And her company now employs 100 employees here. And yes, we really do have those types of employers here. Mr. Woods is a realtor, and he sold a lot of homes in our region in the last 2 years, as you can well imagine. Meet Mario. He's our young professional. He works for a gaming company here in Cedar Park. It's a small startup, and he's here with his dog Cricket. They have a townhome here at Cedar Park Town Center. And then finally, another demographic that we heard from is some of our younger demographic, our teenagers. We've got the Timberwolves and the Vista Ridge folks as well. So Hannah, Alex, and Ryan. And they're here to talk about what they like to see in their community.
This section kind of talks about 2 main things. One are what we call missing places, which are based on all of the community input we got. What we heard from the community you all wanted to see, the types of developments. This section of the plan also identifies some key locations. Key locations for future development and key locations for redevelopment.
Unlike other cities around us, Cedar Park is a landlocked city. And what that means is we don't have the ability to physically grow much outside of the boundaries that exist today. We have Austin to our south, Round Rock to our east, we have Leander to our north, and then we have some preserve and canyon lands, and then Jonestown to our west. So we know our shape looks pretty much like this.
But what it also means is that we have less and less available land and space. So we have to become even more thoughtful about everything that comes into the community as we approach build out. This land is privately owned. So this land is owned by an individual who has, their own kind of interests and motivations and we work with those landowners to meet the needs of the community and find a project that works with our plan and works for them. One of the key roles of a municipality is to look at future land use. That this isn't really zoning. Zoning is a very specific thing that happens on a specific parcel of land. We're talking about future land use, which is big picture. It's things like putting commercial on major corridors, things like that. So it's a little bit more big picture than what you may normally think about when you think about land use and planning items. The future land use plan is not a rigid prescription. It is not a super specific, do all these things type of document. It is much more of a guide to help decision makers with decisions and issues they'll be facing in the future. The section of this plan has the goal of planning for land uses that are balanced and compatible and that promote our community as a premier destination for families and businesses. The first one is really we heard from the community an interest in getting more family-friendly entertainment and kind of a destination type activities. Examples of that could be things like large-scale arcades, game centers, movie theaters, performance art venues, community theaters, museum branches. It's kind of all sorts of activities that are family-friendly and really are something for people to go to, either that live here in Cedar Park or that may come from outside the area. The second missing place is we hear time and time again from the community they would like more opportunities to work here in Cedar Park. We do hear from people a real interest in finding more employers here to get people off of the road, not having to deal with that traffic and congestion. So within the comp plan, we've identified that goal of attracting more major employers to the community with professional, perhaps tech-related jobs. Obviously, with our proximity to Austin, it makes sense to kind of capitalize upon what Austin already is so well known for and try to find more ways to bring that into our community. The next missing place is a need for a higher education institution. The ACC campus on Cypress Creek Road has brought so much to our community, and what we heard was really an interest in seeing that grow. And that can be something like a branch or a satellite campus to an existing institution, or maybe even something that is kind of a hybrid or something outside of the box that kind of integrates in more higher education opportunities into the community. The final missing place that we heard is you want a gathering place. You want somewhere with unique identity that has lots of things for you to do. And this time we also heard, I want date night activities. So what that could mean is some type of walkable mixed use development. So what that can mean is a place that has restaurants, shopping, entertainment, perhaps an interesting residential component, meaning something like lofts or townhomes. This idea of walkable mixed use, we actually see it appealing to everyone in our community. We think everyone can find things there. For our youth, not only do we see them wanting a gathering place that is a safe place for them to go, but we also hear that they want places to get that first job. When you think about Cedar Park, we have so many wonderful single-family neighborhoods. And as we look at kind of reaching build out in that next phase, we don't foresee that many more single-family neighborhoods coming online. We do see a limited number of medium and high density housing, so think lofts and townhome type product, if it's part of another development where that makes sense. And we also see an opportunity and a need for large lot executive housing. So when there's opportunities for that, I think we'll want to take advantage of it. That's what brings us to those key locations. Cedar Park is landlocked, which again means that we don't have wide, vast tracts of undeveloped land necessarily that we can take advantage of that isn't currently in our city limits. So within the comprehensive plan, we did identify some of these key areas, and I'm not going to go into a ton of detail on them all, but I will point some of them out. The first one you'll notice at the north side is called PAB. That stands for Planning Area B. It is near the Cedar Park Center. You'll also see towards the east side along Palmer Lane 3 separate tracks that we foresee development going in the future. And then I'd like to mention PAC. It's on Brushy Creek right by Gupton Stadium, and it is also another large tract of undeveloped land. Also, as Cedar Park last year celebrated its 40th birthday, we are entering the phase of beginning to explore redevelopment. So there are 2 tracks that are actually, we think, prime for redevelopment, perhaps now or in the future. The first one on the west, PAA, is currently operating as a limestone quarry. We see opportunities there in the future to do something with it. It has a lot of neat topographical kind of features since it is a quarry, but it also has some challenges. And then, of course, we should talk about the Bell Corridor. If you think about Bell Boulevard, it is the backbone of Cedar Park. And it is an area that we frequently hear from people as something that they think needs to get some TLC. And so that is becoming a big focus for us to look at redevelopment there. We think that is a prime spot for this because we've also heard from the community you'd like to see a greater sense of identity, a greater sense of unique place, something that tells you you're in Cedar Park and that's different. And Bell Boulevard goes all the way back to 1973. So it has a lot of that kind of unique character already there, and we see some opportunities to take that and maybe grow. Of course, you can't talk about 183 and not mention mobility. Obviously, we've seen traffic volumes on that road greatly increase as our population and the population north of us has increased. So that's something that we're very mindful of. So really big ideas is what we heard from the community as to what you wanted to see here. So it's that entertainment destination type of activity. It is more business and employment opportunities. It is a higher education campus, and then that kind of walkable mixed use, which has a lot of opportunities.
So what is sense of community anyway? Well, if we look at it on its basic level, the words sense and community, basically we could gather that it means those aspects of certain communities that are attractive. So then, looking at what we learned back in 3rd grade science class about our 5 senses, what is it that we can feel and hear and see and smell and taste here in Cedar Park that make it attractive? Again, answers would obviously differ for everyone, but for me, it's feeling that friendly handshake of the new neighbors that just moved in right across the street from us. Or it may be hearing George Strait when he opened the Cedar Park Center a few years ago, or possibly tasting the fresh seafood at Surf and Turf, or smelling the smell of the brisket at Moe's Barbecue, or even seeing the wonderful display of bluebonnets at Brushy Creek Lake Park this spring. In the plan, it's defined simply as creating places that people want to be. So let's take a look at the public facilities portion of the plan. The overall goal presented in this section is to maintain our service levels as the city grows. Public safety is a very important factor when assessing a community's quality of life. A high crime rate may actually deter people from moving to a certain city, and something like an ISO rating of 1, which, by the way, is the highest rating they give and the rating that we have, an ISO rating of 1 may actually attract people to a community. This comprehensive plan indicates that Cedar Park's crime rate is less than half the state's average. The comprehensive plan indicates that planning is currently underway for the expansion of the police station as well as construction of a 5th fire station. Planning is also underway to ensure that both library and parks are able to maintain their levels of service. The library plan as well as the Parks and Open Space Master Plan are both expected to be completed within the year, and those plans will both provide much more detailed information on how to maintain the service levels in both parks and library as our city's population increases. In the Cedar Park Center, that facility has a capacity of 8,700 people, and this facility right here, our recreation center, has a capacity of about 400 people. The comprehensive plan also indicates a possible target area of a convention center or conference center, possibly associated with a hotel, that could possibly hit the sweet spot of a capacity somewhere in between those two facilities. Imagine what it would be like to meet some of your coworkers from Omaha and Phoenix and Dallas right here in Cedar Park for your national sales conference. And then maybe after a day's worth of long meetings, you could take them to the Cedar Park Center for a Toros game or a Stars game or an Aces game. Now, the overall goal presented in the livability section of this plan is to ensure that Cedar Park is seen as a desirable and attractive place. The design of the streets should address safety and mobility, and the pedestrian portions of those designs should provide sidewalks, accessibility, and furnishings, such as outdoor restaurant seating. And there are also some aspects of this category that are more about what we don't see and hear. Screening and buffering techniques, as well as landscape and signage standards, are also shown as opportunities to help ensure that Cedar Park is seen as a desirable place to be. Landscaping is not only a way to improve our visual surroundings, but water-thrifty plant materials can also help in the area of sustainability. As our drought conditions persist into multiple years now, it's important that the efficient use of our resources be incorporated into many of the objectives of this plan. Sustainability includes not only an adequate water supply for our growing population, but it also means being able to live in a community from birth to death. And it also means facilities and infrastructure that not only last, but may even improve with age. Our economic development in Cedar Park has come a long way in a few short years. That being said, there are still many opportunities to attract and expand quality and diverse employers in areas such as technology, innovation, and engineering. And the city should also not forget how important strong partnerships are to keeping the city and its quality of life here. We should work with local and regional partners such as school districts and faith-based organizations, our Chamber of Commerce, and also Austin Community College, the Brushy Creek Regional Utility Authority, the Capital Area Metropolitan Planning Organization, the Lower Colorado River Authority, the Pedernales Electric Cooperative, and there are many others. However, these strong partnerships will go a long way in helping us and Cedar Park achieve our goals as well as our vision for the future. So 2 years ago, our oldest son graduated from an out-of-state 4-year college, and he got married, and he moved right back here to Cedar Park. And our youngest son is now going to be in his 3rd year at Texas Tech University, and what that means is that my wife and I are on the verge of being empty nesters. Yes, we are this close to being the Butterfields. So what that means is that we won't be needing that big backyard, and we are probably looking at the next 2 to 3 years moving to a little bit smaller house. And why I really don't find the idea of moving again very appealing, my wife and I have started developing a short list of places that we'd like to move to. And although there are several neighborhoods on that short list, there still is only one zip code, 78613.
When I first got out of school, I took a job with a consulting firm in South Austin. And I heard all the horror stories about Austin traffic, so I decided to get a rental house within about a mile of the office. That worked out great, but after about a year, the company I worked for relocated to downtown Austin. And at the same time, I decided to buy a house up in northwest Austin, just south of Cedar Park. Now, I really enjoyed my job, but I was finding that in order to avoid traffic on 183 in Mopac, I was going into work around 6:30 in the morning and not coming home until about 7 at night. Now, that was great while I was single, but at the same time, I got married and I found that I wanted to spend some quality time with my wife, so I'd try and get home early. And after sitting in traffic for about an hour and then, having a long day of work, I found that my attitude wasn't the best. So finally, we decided it was time for a change. I was lucky enough to be offered a position with the Cedar Park, and now I actually enjoy my job or my drive to and from work, and I find that I have a lot more quality time to spend with my family. Now, my story may have been a little personal, but I just kind of want to reinforce the fact of how much transportation plays a role in our daily lives. Now, if you look at the history of Cedar Park, in the 1970s, there were very few design standards, and developments basically just had a paved road leading in, and it was just a way for developers to sell lots. Now, over time, the development community home builders began seeing how roads and improved drainage systems can have a benefit to an area, and design standards soon improved. Nowadays, if you look at most developments, they have roadway networks that include streetlights, drainage systems, landscaped entryways, and trail and sidewalk networks that connect to schools, amenity centers, and nearby commercial areas. Now, in addition to incorporating these recent design trends, the role of the transportation portion of the comp plan is to identify the top priorities to improve the city's transportation network and account for continued growth. The comp plan does not provide specific details regarding new roadways or reconstruction projects that we will be working on. It's basically just an overview. The details are included in the Transportation Master Plan, which we are currently updating, and we'll incorporate that into the comp plan when complete. But just to give you an idea of some of the recent results of this planning, we're currently working on the design of the extension of Little Elm Trail between Lakeline and 183. We're also going to be improving Anderson Mill Road near the quarry. And we're also going to widen and reconstruct the section of Whitestone between Cottonwood Creek Trail and Market Street. And a key objective will be for continued planning for new roads and also looking for ways to improve the efficiency of existing roads to meet this growth. Another key objective will be to improve pedestrian connectivity along major corridors by continuing to provide shared use lanes and trail networks wherever possible. We'll also look to incorporate innovative design approaches such as a continuous flow intersection, which we also call the CFI, that will be constructed at the intersection of Whitestone Boulevard and Palmer Lane. Now, thanks to proper planning in the past, we've recently made improvements to Park Street, Brushy Creek Road, and New Hope Drive, but future enhancements will continue to be required. But we're lucky to have a number of major roadways in place, such as Anderson Mill Road, Palmer Lane, 183A, and Bell Boulevard. But we'll also need to continue to make improvements to those roadways to keep up with demand. Now, one idea I will mention that's in the plan is to explore the feasibility of adding access lanes to 183A and hopefully reducing some of the cut-through traffic on Bell Boulevard. And speaking of Bell Boulevard, it's often referred to as the backbone of the city of Cedar Park. And being an engineer, I also want to mention that it serves as a great example of a roadway's life cycle. Started out as a primary thoroughfare into and through the city, and as more homes were built in the corridor, traffic volumes increased and commercial development thrived. Over the years, we've seen an increase in the traffic, and the demands have created congestion, which can have a negative effect on commercial development. So one of the final objectives in the plan is to look for a way to improve mobility along the corridor and also make it more pedestrian friendly and hopefully promote redevelopment. So thanks to the input we've received, the role of the transportation section of the comp plan is to ensure the city of Cedar Park community, whether you're a teenager, a young professional, a family, or an empty nester, have a safe and efficient way to get where you're going.
So what do the next 15 to 20 years look like for Cedar Park? What will Cedar Park be like to live or to work here or to visit here? And why does it matter? Our community vision that's part of this comp plan, I would say, really does embody this idea of Cedar Park continuing to be a desirable place and then some.